Welcome to the Invisible Wheelchair Podcast. I'm your host, Donald Grothoff, along with my wife, Gina. Our goal is to give voice to the hidden mind of obsessive-compulsive disorder, better known as OCD. In this podcast, we are interviewing yet another person dealing with OCD either professionally or personally. So stay with us for this impactful conversation. We would love to have your comments or to have you as a guest, or if you wish to tell your OCD or anxiety story, please visit us at invisiblewheelchair.com. So let's find out more about who we're interviewing today. Today I have the great pleasure of introducing you to Laurieisinger. Laurieisinger is a licensed marriage and family therapist, board certified in applied behavioral analysis, who leads the successful Camarillo, California-based Laurieisinger Behavioral Services Incorporated. Motivated by her own personal tragedy, Laurie has devoted her life to the field of mental health with a clear vision in mind to create a team approach for helping individuals resolve behavioral and other mental health issues by applying a unique combination of behavioral and cognitive behavioral therapies. Her first book, released April of 2021, is titled You're Not Crazy: Living with Anxiety, Obsessions, and Fetishes. Using case studies from her successful practice, delivered in a digestible narrative format and including worksheets designed for the individual to take control of their lives, the book's goal is to help those who suffer deeply from anxiety and mental health concerns, particularly those which have been exacerbated by the devastating pandemic. Laurie earned her postgraduate certification in applied behavioral analysis from Kaplan University. She began her college studies at Oxnard College and at UCLA, and completed her undergraduate degree at UCSB. She received her master's from Cal State Northridge in educational psychology and proceeded to earn a license in marriage and family therapy. Laurie has been practicing behavioral therapist. Laurie has been practicing behavioral specialist. Laurie has been a practicing behavioral specialist since 1995 and in private practice since 2004. Laurie is also an endurance athlete, having made running 100-mile races nearly routine and completing 28 ultramarathons of 31 miles or longer. She's a 3-time Ironman competitor and in 2017 was recognized for her accomplishments as an inductee into the Ventura County Sports Hall of Fame. Since losing her 2-year-old son Jacob Singer to cancer in 1987, she has coordinated an annual fun run and fundraiser, Jacob's Run, in support of her Since losing her 2-year-old son Jacob Singer to cancer in 1987, she has coordinated an annual fun run and fundraiser, Jacob's Run, in support of Children's Hospital of Los Angeles' Child Life program, which provides playrooms and support for patients and their families. To date, more than $350,000 has been raised in support. Now, before we get to that interview, let's hear a word about our sponsor.
Today's podcast is sponsored by Q Sciences. Don and I discovered that the supplements we were taking and giving to our children were not being absorbed properly. I was very excited when I found Q Sciences. I was impressed with the quality of the products and that they provide maximum absorption. They have a variety of products, including a Q Max product, which is a combination of 3 products, including vitamins, minerals, and a probiotic. They also have hemp oil, a vitamin B12 spray, a sleep spray, and kids products. I've really seen a difference in how these products are improving how I feel, improving my mental health, and I'm happy with the quality of these products and how they're helping our whole family. If you'd like to learn more,
simply go to qsciences.focusedhealthyfamily.com. That's the letter Q, sciences.focusedhealthyfamily.com, or visit invisiblewheelchair.com and find out more information there.
and stop throwing your money away on supplements that don't work and use a quality product like Q Sciences.
And now, on to the podcast. Well, Laurie, thank you so much for being part of the Invisible Wheelchair podcast. I'm excited to have you here and to talk with you.
Well, I'm excited to be here, and thank you for inviting me.
So, Laurie, what I ask all my guests is to see if they could give us a story, a little bit of a personal story about yourself, to give my audience a kind of a different view of you in a more personal way.
Okay, sure. And it's interesting that you say that, because in the book that I just wrote, I actually gave a lot of information about myself, which I wasn't sure if I should disclose or not. But I thought that it would give me a better way to connect with individuals, to let them know that I actually suffered as, a young child and an adult, and I experienced anxiety myself, coming from a home with an alcoholic mother who was also addicted to drugs, and having to live through that. And then she left our family when I was 10 years old, and my dad raised us back in 1970 when I was 10 years old, and a father raising a family of 3 kids. And we were, I don't even know if we were middle class income. I think we were below that, but my dad was a great dad, and he did the best that he could. So I lived through that, and I ended up in a relationship at 19 with my now husband. We're still together. So we're going to be celebrating our 40th wedding anniversary. Amazing. Also, at 26 years old, I lost my second child to cancer. Here we go. Another body blow, first being raised in a home with an alcoholic parent, and then having to watch your son slowly die of cancer is something that I don't wish upon anybody, but it gave me the empathy and understanding to help others. Of course, not before I experienced many panic attacks along the way. Also, something really important came out of that was after our son passed away in the hospital, our older daughter, she was 5 at the time, would come to the hospital and visit, because we lived there for 2.5 months until he passed. There was nothing for her to do there. There was like a Mr. Potato Head with 1 eye, or a checkerboard with 3 pieces. So we wanted to do something in the memory of our son. So we had a fun run, because I run. All the money was donated to Children's Hospital in the 4 West unit, the cancer floor. And this will actually be the 35th year that we've had that fundraiser, 35 years in his name. And we actually started a child life program at Children's Hospital of Los Angeles. That is an amazing program. It's a room where the patients, the young children, can go. It's a doctor-free zone, so the kids can go and play. And there's actually therapists that are helping the children who, if they're, write a book and leave to their family if they're going to be passing away, or it helps the siblings deal with what's going to, what they're going through with their family. So we're very, very proud of that. And I think that's, looking back, I would love to have my son back. It would mean everything to me. But when I look at all the families that we've helped along the way, at least it gives me something, so.
Yeah. Well, that is a wonderful story. And it's one of those things that I think things that come out of somebody's a tragedy turns into a real inspiration and a real positive. So maybe that was his life purpose, was to come here to lead you to that place. So it's such a wonderful story. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
What I wanted to talk about, because you have a whole team that you work with in helping people through their anxiety and their behavior issues. And I know you work with cognitive behavioral therapy, and I wanted to find out, because we talked to a lot of therapists. I've interviewed a lot, and I always like to get each therapist's unique skills or style of working. So can we talk a little bit about how you do your work and how you might find yourself unique in yourself and in your team?
Sure. So my approach is I use two modalities of therapy. I use the cognitive behavioral, which we try to change those negative and irrational thoughts. And then the behavioral is like, how can we change the environment to help change your behavior? Because I think the two work extremely well together. I tell it like it is up front, and when my clients come into my office, I explain to them, look, this is what it's going to look like when you come in. We're going to get a history of the problem behavior. But I'm not going to dwell on the past. I stay in the present, because when people come to see me, they're stuck. They can't move forward. And my goal is to teach them, you can get unstuck. You can do this. And not only therapy, but coaching them and encouraging them and giving them the self-confidence that they can do it. The fact that they're sitting in my office is proof that they can move forward in life. Then I teach them how to take data, ABC data, antecedent behavior and consequence. When they come back, we analyze the data together. I also like to get family members involved if possible, if they're living with somebody, either if it's siblings, spouses, parents, whoever, because their perspective is much different. So their data is a different data sheet. It's from another person's perspective. What are they seeing? Because a lot of times they don't see the same thing that the individual themselves are experiencing. From that, I write an individual behavioral plan for that person. That would include an explanation of, cognitive behavioral therapy, and then a treatment plan, which would be a motivational story, a task list, because they're going to be expected to practice their plan and they have to keep track of that. And I make them accountable for that. And then different visuals for around the house. The signal plan is it's a big part of the strategies that I use as well, that I came up with really when I myself was experiencing anxiety. I kind of came, and I don't know if you want to hear about that or not.
Sure, no, because I was going to ask you. That was going to be the next question. I hear that word signal, and I don't know what that is. So I want to know myself, and so yes, please share what that means.
When my son was ill, I'm a runner, and the local college had asked me to run cross country for them. And I thought, oh, sure, what the heck, even though I was horrible in school, because I was never diagnosed with ADHD until I was in my 40s. So I barely graduated high school. So I was very afraid to start college. And I decided, okay, I'm going to do this. I might as well do it. I was kind of numb and just going through the motions of life anyway, right after his death. Then I went back to school, and I did really well in school because I applied the same type of training for a race as I did to studying. And I actually ended up graduating. Yes, I ended up graduating valedictorian of my junior college. I know, what a shock, complete shock. Then I got got into UCLA, got my master's, got my license, got a second credential. So to me, I know that this stuff can work. Well, when I was in graduate school, I went to a therapist for the first time. And while in therapy, we talked about, I always shoved down my feelings and didn't deal with them. But when I was in therapy, everything came out and it was exposed. My mother's alcoholism, my son's death. Well, I just started having major panic attacks. I couldn't drive on the freeway. It was horrible, horrible situation. At that time, I was working with foster kids, and there was a play group that we were doing. And in that group, it was, okay, run to first, check it out. Is it safe? If it's safe, go to second. Second base, go to third. My therapist said, well, take some deep breaths. And then, when you have a panic attack. And I thought, well, I need something more. So I came up with the concept of not just running to bases, but what if I had a signal card, something visual with me? So when I start to feel that anticipatory anxiety, right, the first signs that I might have a panic attack, I think, okay, red means stop. I would think of a signal and I would have it next to me. And then yellow means make a choice. Okay, I'm going to make a choice. I'm going to stay calm. I'm not going to, I'm going to do some deep breathing. Green, go, start the deep breathing, relax. And it worked. It was amazing. It was like I was my own guinea pig. And then I started to use that with my clients.
Wow, that's neat. That is a real, and you answered the next question, which was the anticipatory anxiety. So that's I always call that kind of the what if world. It's thinking about what's coming and all that. Before you get into it, it's thinking about.
It is. It's the what ifs. And I use that. It's interesting you say that, because when I give the binder to my clients, when I talk about cognitive behavioral therapy, I say it's the what if statements that create that anticipatory anxiety. And what happens is that we become hyper focused on those what ifs. And if we cannot stop them, then they turn into a maladaptive behavior, which could be going to any social events. It could affect your job. It could affect school, your relationships with other people. So you're right. It's the what ifs.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I don't know. I don't think it was a therapist. I'm trying to think where I read, you need to go from the what ifs to the what is world is where that came from, where I heard it from. I found it interesting. You talk about triggers and how to identify triggers. And I've talked some about that myself in my podcast and in the work I do. How do you get your clients to identify those triggers that really set that anxiety off?
Through the data, and I can use a client that I just met with like 2 days ago. As she came in, I get a lot of excoriation, which is in my book as well, which is a fancy name for skin picking. Okay. And it's called excoriation, but it's skin picking. We read through her, we analyzed and read through the data together. And I said, so it looks like from the data that you've taken, the ABC in the antecedent part, it looks like you engage in skin picking just before your father comes home, or just, when you're ready to have a conversation with your mother and your father together. So people don't realize, because they've been engaging in the behavior for such a long time, and they can't really step back and look at it objectively. A lot of times people say, well, there are no triggers. I just do it. I don't know when I do it. I just do it. And I said, well, take the data and I know what to look for, and then we'll analyze it together. And then she also didn't realize that she was actually engaging in the behavior only in one room at the house, which is going to make it easy, because now when I write the treatment plan, she won't be allowed in.
Okay. Well, and you talk about data, and this is a little off, I think, what we talked about, but I keep hearing you talk about data. Can you explain that a little bit more about what you mean by the data? Is this something that they're writing down? They're like, is it kind of like a log that they're doing of what their behaviors are?
Yeah. So in my book, there's two data sheets that I use. One, as I said, from another person's perspective, and then one is if I was giving it to you. And you would write down, first it would say ABC, antecedent, behavior, and consequence. I would also want to know the time of the day and the date that it occurred, because what we're tracking is not only what occurred just before the behavior, because if you're writing down the behavior, let's say the behavior is, my heart started to beat fast, I started to pick my hands, that would be the behavior, right? Okay. Well, what happened just before that? My dad was going to be coming home from work, or my dad walked in the door, or my parents were arguing. What was a consequence of you picking your skin? I continue to pick it. Or I told myself I shouldn't be doing this, but I'm only going to do it this one time and I won't do it next time. So kind of, bargaining with yourself. So, because that happens quite a bit as well. Mm-hmm. And then what I look for is I look for that baseline. How many times a day is that behavior occurring? What is the intensity of that behavior? What is the magnitude? Are they making gashes in their legs? Or is the flesh showing? Because this happens sometimes. Or are they just lightly scratching other areas? Also, the duration, how long are they engaging in the behavior? Because I want to know, so if the behavior, let's say the skin picking, for example, is occurring in the bathroom while they're washing their face, then I need to, when I write the treatment plan, it would be to put the lights on dim, to use a baby washcloth. You never use your fingers, because then you'll feel for little marks and then they start picking. So use a soft baby washcloth, and you have to set a timer. If they tell me they're spending 20 minutes washing their face, I tell them you're in and out in 2 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes. That's all you get. You set a timer, you leave the door open so that family members know that you're in there and they can gauge it as well. Does that help?
Oh yeah, no, that just wanted to understand. I kind of figured it was that, but wasn't sure of it, and I wanted to make sure to define it for the audience too.
And one more thing I want to mention from the data
Sure.
is important. So sometimes people will get discouraged because the behavior may not stop right away, but what they need to notice is the duration is much shorter and the intensity. So you are making progress. Let's not expect immediate results. That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen overnight. Most of the people that come to see me have been engaging in a maladaptive behavior for a long time. So we can't expect it to stop immediately. So I want to encourage them that no, you are getting better. Look at the data and, we'll go from there.
Okay. Well, the other thing that one of the questions that you were sent over is when the anxiety is normal. And I get a kick out of the normal term because now I'm an EFT practitioner, a tapping practitioner. I'm not, if you're familiar with emotional freedom techniques or not, but
No.
I see clients, and one of the first things when they sit down with me, they'll go, I just want to be normal.
Yeah.
I find that kind of ironic in a way because what is normal mean? So you talk about in this when anxiety is normal. And what does that mean for you? How do you define normal for somebody to know when anxiety should be normal?
Anxiety, it's normal to have anxiety and nervousness. I mean, I was a little anxious about, having this interview with you, but it didn't mean that I was a nervous wreck and I was so obsessed about it that I might have called you and canceled, right? Something that isn't normal would just mean that I would have canceled our interview. So when it starts to affect your everyday living, your personal relationships, your job, your happiness, then I would say you need to get help. But when people say I want to be normal, I say there is no normal.
Yeah.
That's my answer. Yeah. No normal. Or I also have clients that their parents may have told them their whole life, well, they're very special. My, little Joey's very special and he just has these behaviors. And I say, well, Joey's not that special. He needs to behave like everybody else, because what's going to happen is if you can allow these behaviors to continue and you say that they're special, by the time, 5, 6, 7, then you get to 10 and 13 and you get the hormones kicking in and the behaviors may become more aggressive. They get older and then people in society see this out in the community and their behaviors become frightening to others. And then they lose friendships or they aren't able to develop friendships. So it becomes debilitating. There is no normal and there is no special.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. Let's talk a little bit about your book. You just published your first book. Congratulations. I think that's great. It's You're Not Crazy, Living with Anxiety, Obsessions, and Fetishes. What brought you to the point of wanting to write a book?
What happened was I've been doing this for over 20 years. And through that time, I've been getting a lot of referrals from psychologists and psychiatrists and physicians in the area. And they said, Laurie, we, especially the dermatologists, the skin pickers, and the other pediatricians, they say, we've gotten such excellent feedback from your work that it really helps the individuals that you've been working with. We can't there is no pill a lot of times to just fix something, a magic wand pill, because then you're just kind of alleviating some of the symptom, but you're really not taking care of the problem. And the individual isn't learning any replacement behaviors. So they encouraged me throughout the years, you should really write a book because you would help so many people if you wrote a book. So finally, when in 2020, when I turned 60, I'm a real goal setter. So I set a goal for myself and I said, okay, this is it. I turned 60, I'm writing a book. And that's why I did it.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, and I'll have that information of the book and a link to the book on the invisiblewheelchair.com website too. So one final question for you is, what advice would you give or tips would you give to someone who's just now starting to realize that they have OCD, or maybe they've been diagnosed with OCD? What would you say to them? What would be the information you would tell them?
I would want them to know that there is hope, that you can get unstuck. It may take a little work, but you can do it. I've seen it. This is why I keep doing what I do, because I know that it works. And it just, I see the outcome in people and how it's just life changing for them. There's nothing like that, as you know, helping somebody through a difficult time. It's the best feeling to watch somebody move forward in life who has felt so stuck. And I, as a matter of fact, somebody had given my book to a relative of theirs, 76 years old. 76 years old. Since the time he was 25, he had OCD, irrational thoughts. These irrational thoughts were just so horrible for him. He would have these emotional breakdowns. We've only been working over the phone. He doesn't want to do FaceTime. He doesn't want to do Zoom, which is fine. He lives in a different state. That's fine. But he said this is the best he's ever felt in his life, that he feels in control, and that it's those obsessive thoughts aren't dictating his everyday life. What a relief.
Yeah.
What a relief.
That's wonderful. That is very good advice, is, find any kind of piece of hope you can to know that, because the one thing about OCD that I like, or I shouldn't say like, that doesn't sound right, but is the fact that it does have a manageable point to it. I don't like to say curable, but I'd say it's very manageable, and not all anxiety disorders you can say that about, which is, like I said, kind of the good side of it, I guess. And
that's a good point that you brought up, because a lot of individuals, they'll say, well, I have OCD, or I have ADHD, or I'm ASD on the spectrum. And I say, well, let's find out how you can use that to your advantage. Let's find out what you're really good at, and let's just channel that into something where you can be happy and, just be a productive human being.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because one part of my podcast I call Stories from the OCD Side. And I've gotten people that have gone through OCD or even in the middle of it, and they tell their own story there. One of the questions I've started asking over the last 4 or 5 different ones I've done is, what benefit do you see that comes out of OCD? Or is there anything good you find in OCD? Because it's one thing, I've had people say, well, in a way it's made me stronger. I'm actually very organized.
Yes.
But then I had somebody just recently said, but there's a fine line there with that you can take that and run it into an obsession, or, or into a compulsion.
Very, very, very true.
So you have to be kind of careful with it. But yet, there are some, I look at even my oldest daughter, she's such a strong person now. It's kind of like, well, I've been through that. What else can you throw at me? I can handle that. I can probably get through anything, kind of thing. So anyway, it's neat that you said that, and I appreciate that. Lastly, just open up for my audience. How is the best way for them to find out more about you and your team?
Well, I think the easiest way is to look on my website, lauriesingerbehavioral.com. And my name is spelled Laurie, Singer, Singer, behavioral.com. That would be the easiest way. They can look at my book as well. Everything should be on there, all the links.
Yeah, I'll remind my audience that all this will be up on the invisiblewheelchair.com website under the interview resources, where you can find all the different people I've interviewed over time. And of course, Laurie will be right there when this comes out. So, Laurie, this has been wonderful. It's enjoyable talking with you. I think what you've said is really inspiring, and you do inspiring work, and I think that's wonderful. There's just not enough of us out there being the advocates that we need, and you being out there is wonderful. And I thank you so much for being part of this.
Thank you for having me. It was really a pleasure talking with you.
This concludes this podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. Remember that we love comments. We also would love for you to be our guest or to tell your story. Simply go to invisiblewheelchair.com. Gina and I want you to know that there is hope for those who suffer with OCD, and that it is manageable. and we are here to help you and your family. To find out more about our practice and what we can do for you, go to focusedhealthyfamily.com. Opinions and ideas expressed here are not necessarily those of Focused Healthy Family, Family OCD, Invisible Wheelchair Podcast, or the Grothoffs. Thank you for listening. Keep tapping and focusing forward in your journey.